Psalm 27, getting ready to land the plane. We're in verse 14. Talked about this last time. Wait patiently for the Lord. I'm not good at that. I am not good at that at all. I want what I want. And oh, by the way, I want it now. I can blame a lot of things for this. Like, for instance, we live in a microwave culture, right? One of the, I think it's kind of funny is that if you buy minute rice, look on the back of the box, gives you microwave instructions for cooking minute rice. There's irony in that. We get what we want generally, and generally we get it when we want it. If we got enough money, if we've got enough influence, and often money creates influence, but if we've got enough money and influence, we can get what we want when we want it. Most marketing is aimed at that kind of hunger that we have. And they don't have to create the hunger. All they have to do is poke at it to stimulate it a little bit. And because it's already in us, in my opinion, it's part of how broken we are. David writes, wait patiently for the Lord. And I touched on this last time. It's worth me saying again. He didn't say, wait patiently for what the Lord will do for you. Wait patiently for the Lord. I am so, I guess I would say, I get very disappointed with myself because I am more often most interested in what I can get from God, not God Himself. I want in my life, somehow, by the work of God's Spirit, His Holy Spirit living in me, teaching me, guiding me, wooing me, dragging me sometimes. I want to learn how to make God the object, not stuff from Him, Him. Okay. Then he says a quite interesting thing, I think, in context of this waiting for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. I do not consider myself a brave person. I want to believe that if circumstances called for it, demanded it, I would step up. But it is not my default. It embarrasses me a little bit to confess this, but comfort is my default, not bravery. You're rarely going to be brave and comfortable. They just almost never go together. Be brave and courageous. I wonder why David would put those two things in the context of this idea of being patiently waiting for God. Well, if you go back and open up the entire psalm, and you remember and realize that David had military enemies, and dealing with, meeting these enemies required bravery and courage. So there's that connection. But I think sometimes to wait for the Lord requires bravery and courage. mean, there are times when, anyway, with me, I, God, apparently, it seems to me, he hasn't shown up yet. And I have this urge to take matters in my own hands, right? The problem with that is I don't have big enough hands for taking the matters. It takes courage to wait on the Lord, to wait for the Lord. I'm going to say on the two levels that I can think of. Number one, it takes courage, it takes bravery to wait for God to provide. I say this all the time. I say all the time. That's not true. That's an exaggeration. But I do often see in my life how waiting for God's provision causes anxiety in me. I get very anxious waiting on God's provision, whether it's opportunity, money, security, answers, whatever it is. Waiting for these things from God creates anxiety in me. There's this other side of it. Wait for God, for Him, not just things from Him. And this is me. It may not be true of you, but it is true of me, and maybe it could be true of others, that waiting for God to show up, that takes courage. Have you ever had a season of what feels like spiritual drought? I mean, I have. I've had times when God seemed far away and silent. So did David. Hanging in there and waiting for God during those times of dryness and feeling God as absent takes courage to wait those things out. And then he reiterates, yes, wait patiently for the Lord. So I'm going to quit early today, but I want to ask you to think deeply about this one thing. What are you waiting on the Lord for? Or how are you waiting on the Lord? Kind of do a little self-reflection and observation on what's the nature of your waiting on God. It isn't evil to wait for things from Him. He is our provider. He's our provision. He gives us what we need. He wants to do this. It's not like if I'm waiting for something from God, well, that's just immature. No, it's not. But if that overwhelms my desire for Him, the giver, not just the gift, that's a problem. Now, two questions. What are you waiting for from Him? And second question, are you waiting for Him, not just something from Him? If you ask yourself those questions and then answer them as best you can, it's going to shed light on your deepest motives. Then last question. How you doing with the wait patiently thing? Don't beat yourself up if you struggle with that. No need to hurt yourself about that. Instead, call out to the one who gives patience, the one who provides a fruit of patience in those in whom he lives. That's God himself, the Holy Spirit. I mentioned it before, Galatians 5, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience. It's a legitimate prayer. God, produce the fruit of patience in my life. And you have to realize, as I said before, that is a dangerous prayer, because God grants us patience in the context of struggle. So when I ask God for patience, I'm essentially asking him for struggle. Or else you may be in a struggle right now. Call out to him for patience. Are you out of patience? Been there pretty routinely. Good news, God doesn't run out. His patience endures. Well, that's all I got. We'll look at something else next time on So Care with Stevie.